Okay, solve the equation. We have x to the second power minus 9x plus 14 equals 0. Now you make a solution box and you're to solve for x. What do you have for x's? Well, I've got an x second and I've got an x to the first. Okay, so that's going to be factoring properties. So there's going to be two answers. Again, there's that sheet. Okay, there's factoring properties and there's linear properties. Linear properties factoring properties is used when you have the same variable but it's to two different powers. Okay, and then linear properties is to be used when you have the variable to the same power throughout the equation. So you put how many answers, you have your 0, and now you count your terms that you have. You have 1, 2, 3. So that's GCF and then the T-chart. Okay, so x on the end, nope. Negative in front, nope. 1, 9, and 14. Okay, on the multiplication table, that's only going to be in row 1. Okay, so A, B, C. So 1 times 14 is 14. It's a positive, so that's going to be a match. Okay, so negative, negative. It's got to add to negative 9. Remember, you can always switch it to positive if you have to, double positive. So 14 divided by 1 is 14. That adds to negative 15. That can't be it. 14 divided by 2 is 7, and that adds to your negative 9. So you put in your parentheses. Your A is 1x to the second power, so you can put in your negative 2, negative 7. We got x times x. And then we're going to apply the 1 coefficient in front of each of my x's. Now, 1 and 2 can only divide by 1, and 1 and 7, same thing. So they really just stay the same. Okay, so we bring those over here. We have 1x minus 2 times 1x minus 7 equals 0. So F1, F2. So 1x minus 2 could equal 0. 1x minus 7 could equal 0. So you don't need the 1 multiplier, you just add 2 to both sides and you get 2. And then you add 7 to both sides and you get 7. Okay? You don't need the 1. So it's 2 and 7. Okay, x to the third power minus 2x to the second power minus 9x plus 18 equals 0. So we have x to the third, x to the second, and x. So obviously you have to use your factoring properties again. Okay. So now you'd have 3 answers because x is to the third power. Now, you check your 0, it's there. Now you count the number of terms. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'd be grouping and then dots. Okay, GCF outside. And then little parentheses, big parentheses, and of course we have to check at the end if the big parentheses represents a difference of perfect squares. Okay, so we put the 1x cubed minus the 2x to the second. Then we put the negative 9x, and that is negative, plus 18. Now we find the GCFs of the binomials. So we have x second and x third, so we would factor out x to the second. You can't, it's got to be x second, x third, x second. Take the x second. No, negative 1 and 2 is 1. There's no x, there is a negative here. 9 and 18, that's going to be 9. Okay, so up here I'll divide by 1x to the second, and then here I will be dividing by negative 9. So that takes me to 1x third divided by x to the second, leaves me with an x remainder. Then negative 2, then x second divided by x second, and that cancels. That's 1x minus 2. So 1x minus 2 inside of each quantity. And then I put the 1x to the second plus, right, minus 9 if it's plus negative. I take these 1's off, and that x minus 2 is going to be my F1. Okay. But this here we need to factor down further, okay? We have a positive and negative, so it's a difference, okay? Are they perfect squares? Well, yeah, obviously, because x second can be written as x times x, okay? And then the 9 on the other side, that's 3 times 3. So I can rewrite that as x and then 3. So instead of writing this, I put x plus 3 times x minus 3, and that's the difference of perfect squares. And there's my 3 factors, okay? So x minus 2 could equal 0, x plus 3 could equal 0, x minus 3 could equal 0. So we add 2 to both sides, and we get 2. We minus 3 from both sides, we get negative 3. Then we add 3 to both sides, and we get positive 3. So those are my 3 solutions. Okay, number 3, we have 8x to the second power plus 6x equals 9. So we have x second and we have x. So again, we're using factoring properties. So there's 2 answers. Okay. So we need our 0, so we take out the 9. Now, 9 can't be subtracted from either of these because that's multiplied by x second, that's multiplied by x, so there's no like terms, so I just hang it out. So I have 0, and we have x to the second, x constant. So x second I have 8, then we have 6, then we have negative 9. So there's 3 terms, so that would be GCF, and then the table. So there's no x, there's no negative. 8, 6, and 9 would just be in 1's row. So then ABC. So 8 times negative 9 is negative 72. So that's a mismatch. And we have to add to try to get to positive 6. Okay. 72 divided by 172, that's negative 71. That's too wide. 72 divided by 2 is 36. That's negative 34. That's too wide. 72 divided by 3 is 24. That's negative 21. That is too wide. And 74 divided by 4 is 18. That's negative 14. Too wide. Just go over here with it. 72 divided by 5 is a decimal. 72 divided by 6 is 12. Now, if I add 6 and negative 12, that's going to be negative 6. Okay, that's cool. We just have to make it positive 6 by going plus 12 and negative 6. So now they mismatch. They add to positive 6. They multiply to negative 72. Now, my A is 8x to the second, keep in mind. Negative 6, positive 12. Then we go x times x. Then we apply the 8 coefficient in front of the x's. 8 and 6 are both divisible by 2, okay? And the 8 and the 12 are both divisible by 4. They're also divisible by 2, but you got to divide by the highest amount. So this is 4x minus 3, and this is 2x plus 3. Now at the end, multiply in your head the numbers in front of the x. 4 times 2 is 8. Bingo. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. Bingo. So we have factored this correctly. 4x minus 3 times 2x plus 3. And now F1, F2. So 4x minus 3 could equal 0. 2x plus 3 could equal 0. So we would add the 3. That takes you to 3. 3 divided by 4 is 0.75. You can either write that or 3/4. Okay. Then minus 3 minus 3. 0 minus 3 is going to be negative 3. Then you divide by 2. And you can write negative 1.5 or negative 3 over 2. Okay, number 4. 5x to the second power minus 5 equals 10. So I have x second only. This is why it's important that you write, you have x second only, so that's not factoring properties, that's the linear properties. So fill out how many answers there are. There's 2. Okay. Now you collect the x terms if there's more than 1, but there's only 1. So once there's 1, okay, I solve it. I mark the times, the second power, and the minus. So we have to do get rid of the minus 5 with plus 5. What I'm listing here is linear properties. Then you're going to get rid of the times 5 with divide by 5. Then you have a second power, and you're going to do a square root. So plus 5, that's 15. Then divide by 5, and that's 3. Then you find the square root of 3. Now 3 is not a perfect square, so it's going to be irrational. So the square root of 3 is 1.73. But that could be positive or negative when you find the square root. Okay. Next one, 7x to the second power minus 14x equals 0. So I have x second and x again. So now I'm back to the factoring properties. Okay. Your zero's there. You have 2 answers. Okay. So you got to list how many answers. Equals 0. Now count the number of terms. There are 2. So it's a binomial. That's your factoring. So GCF. And then difference of perfect squares. So x at the end, yeah. Negative in front, no. 7 and 14, that's going to be 7. Okay. So I factor out 7x, put it down there because it has x, it's important. Then 7 divided by 7 is 1. Divide the x squared by the x, leaves us with an x remainder. Negative 14 divided by 7 is negative 2. Then the x divided by the x is a cancellation. So now we check and see if this is a difference of perfect squares. Now, starting in this video, if your x has a 1 in front, or no, I don't want to get to that. Positive and negative. And 1's a perfect square, that's 1 times 1, but the x connected to it is not to the second power, so that's not a perfect square. So then you cross that out and write no. So then you put 1x minus 2 equals 0. So F1, F2. So 7x could equal 0, or 1x minus 2 could equal 0. So you're going to divide by the 7 and you get 0. You don't need the multiplier of 1. You just add 2 because dividing 2 by 1 is pointless. Okay, it's still 2. 0 and 2. Okay, number 6. X to the second power minus 6x plus 3 equals 0. So we have x second and x. So we are using the factoring properties. So there would be 2 answers. Okay. 0's there, and we have a trinomial. So we need to try to factor the trinomial. Remember, if the trinomial is prime and it doesn't factor, we have something else we can use. Okay. So no x, no negative 1, 6, and 3 would just be 1. So ABC. 1 times 3 is 3 positive, so it's a match. And it has to add to negative 6. But you see, when I divide 3 by 1, I get 3, and that adds to negative 4, so that's already too narrow. So now we know that can't be factored, so we use the quadratic formula. X equals opposite of b, opposite of b, e plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac, b squared minus 4ac over 2a over 2a. So the opposite of negative 6 is positive 6. And then b to the second, negative 6 to the second. Then a is 1, c is 3, and a is 1. Okay, so you got 6 in front. 2 times 1 is 2. Now you make your square root, and to find the inside, you're going to take negative 6 to the second before subtracting 4 times 1 times 3, just like that. You get 24. Okay, now that could be a positive, negative. Now this isn't, 24 is not a perfect square, so it's going to be 4.90. I just approximate it, round it off. Now I take 6 plus 4.90, click equals, and divide by 2. You get 5.45. Then you take 6 and subtract 4.90, click equals, divide by 2, and you get 0.55. Okay, now on my next page, we have 5 times the quantity x minus 4 to the second. So on this one, we've got the x in a parentheses with a minus 4, but there's a second power there, okay? So the second power, we have to use the h, okay, to replace that. And there's 2 answers, okay? So you cannot distribute. You are blocked, okay? That 2 blocks you from being able to distribute. So I'm going to write blocked right there. So you can't distribute with that second power. So you replace the entire parentheses with h. It's going to be multiplied by 5. It's going to be to the second power. It's going to equal 40. You got to remember the second power. Now once you get your h solved for, then you bring back your quantity x minus 4. Now 2 of them, because I apply linear properties here. So I need to divide by 5 and I need to square root. When I square root, that'll be the positive negative. So that is 8. h to the second power equals 8. Now 8 is not a perfect square. It is not 4. Then there's no rational number times itself. That's 8, so it's 2.83. Now those are not your 2 answers. You've got to bring them over here and set the expression x minus 4 equal to each one of these. So I would add 4, and that would be 6.83. Then over here I would add 4, and negative 2.83 plus 4 is going to be 1.17. Okay, 8. Now we have the quantity x minus 4, but there's no power, so we are not blocked. We need to just go ahead and distribute. So I don't need to use h. It's one answer. And you distribute. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20 equals 40. Okay. Now, I'm going to plus 20. And then I'm going to divide by 5, but I do not have to do the square root because there's no second power. So plus 20, that's 60. So 5 times the x variable equals 60. Now I divide each side by 5 and we get 12. Okay, but no square root to that. Okay, now story problems. A missile is launched in the air with a velocity of 700 feet per second from a height of 25 feet. 25 feet is before they launch it, so I'm going to put that there. Calculate the time it takes a missile to hit 0 feet. So we're finding the seconds, so I know seconds is important, and I would put it with feet. So seconds is x, feet is y. So feet per second is 700. But what happens when something goes up? An object goes up, it comes down. So that's done by the force of gravity, which is negative 16x to the second. So I don't make a table, I just draw a parabola. And we started at 25 feet, and at the end we see 0 feet. And my job is to find out question mark seconds have passed till we get to 0 feet. So you got x second, x, the constant, equals y. So negative 16 followed by 700. Then we take that 25 feet, put it into the constant, and 0 feet, unfortunately, has to go in for y. Okay? Okay, so that leaves me with x, a second, so I'm solving for x. Now x is to the second and it's to the first. Okay? So you have to apply your factoring properties to solve this. So there's 2 answers, and we're at 0. You can check that, and it's a trinomial. So it'd be GCF and then the t table. So no x, there is a negative, 16,725. Now, 700 you're never going to go across, but you know it's 16, you can just look at 1625, okay? Not 8. Here's 16, no 25, no 25, so it's pretty much going to be 1, okay? So I'll factor out negative 1. And then since 700 is way too extreme, you know, you divide that on your calculator just to check. 16x second, negative 700x, negative 25. Now the AC product, 16 times negative 25 is negative 400. Now if it's above 100, I'm going to skip the factoring and go to the quadratic formula. I will allow you to do that if it's over 100. So opposite of B plus or minus the square root B squared minus 4AC over 2A. So the opposite of negative 700 is positive 700. Then B negative 700, then 4AC, A is 16, C is negative 25. Then on the bottom, A is 16. So we really don't need that negative 1 as it turns out. If I factored it into two parentheses, I'd put the parentheses, but we're not doing that. So we put 700, 2 times 16 is 32. Now I figure out the square root, okay? So, negative 700 to the second, subtract the product of 4, 16, negative 25, 491,600. But remember, that's going to go down because we have to square root. So now I find the square root of 491,600. And I got 701.14. 700 plus 701.14, click equals, divide by 32, and you get 43.79. And then we take 700 and subtract 701.14, click equals, divide by 32, and you get negative 0.04. So obviously the positive is the answer we want, 43.79 seconds to get from 25 feet to 0 feet. Okay, next problem. A pitcher is 22 by 20 inches. You design a frame to put around the pitcher. This creates an area of 840 square inches. Find the frame's width. Now, this is a shape. So you want to draw the shape. It's 22 by 20. Now, what are you doing? You're putting a frame around the outside. So now you'll have to remeasure the length and the width. So the length in the middle is 22, and then the outside edges are X. And then the width in the middle is 20, then XX. Now, anytime we're dealing with the shape, we write the main equation, and down here is for the side work. So we know that when we're talking area, that's length times width equals area. So the area we know is 840. But the length is going to be 2x plus 22. See, my job is to find out the value for that x. And then 2x plus 20. So before I solve, I need to do my FOIL method. So I take 2x times 2x and 2x times 20. That's the end of 2x, and 22 times 2x and 22 times 20. So this is 4x second, this is 40x, this is 44x, and this is 440. Now you combine your like terms. So x second, x, constant. So you have 4 for x second, 84x, then 440. So line that up over here, but don't put equals 0, because as of now that expression is equal to 840. Okay? So now we can solve for x, but the equation has an x second and x first, so we have to apply factoring properties. Okay, 0 is not there, so we remove the 840 and then subtract it from the 440 because those are like terms. So you have x second, x, constant equals 0. So we have 484, and that's going to give me negative 100. Okay, so I go GCF table because it's a trinomial. So I'm not seeing the x, not seeing the negative, then 484 and 100 are all in the row 4. Okay, or you can just take those and divide them all by 4. If there's no decimals, then 4 is the one to use. Okay, and they're not, no decimals, so I want to factor out 4. So it's going to give me 1x to the second, positive 21x, and then negative 25. So you bring that 4 over here. Okay. and then ABC that. Wait a second, that's wrong. 400 minus 840 is negative 400. That's my fault. 4 is still the one to use, though, because you can still divide 400 still divisible by 4, so it's 4. But this is wrong. This is negative 100. I screwed that up. Sorry. Now we're good. Okay. So 1 times negative 100 is negative 100. So that's a mismatch. Positive, negative. It's got to add to positive number. It's not over 100, so I'm going to go through and try this. So 100 divided by 1 is 100. That adds to negative 99, 2 wide. 100 divided by 2 is 50. That adds to negative 48, 2 wide. 100 divided by 3 is a decimal. 100 divided by 4 is 25. That looks promising. Yep, that's negative 21. We just need to circle it and make it positive 21 with the plus and the negative. Okay, so your A is 1x to the second power. Okay, so I put in the negative 4, the positive 25, then x times x, and then apply the 1 in the front. Now you can divide those by 1, is it? 1, so they're already in simplest form. They don't change. So I put 1x minus 4 and then 1x plus 25. Now this 4 is completely useless. It has no x. The f1 and f2 come from here. Those are how you find the roots. So 1x minus 4 equals 0. 1x plus 25 equals 0. Okay, you can take the 1 off the front. Plus 4, you get 4. Minus 25, and you get negative 25. Okay, so 4 is the legit answer you want to put. Sorry about that mess up there. It might have thrown you off. Okay, last problem. A soccer ball is kicked off the ground with a velocity of 40 feet per second. How many seconds will it land on the ground? So we are finding the seconds. That's what we're solving for. So we have feet and seconds. Seconds is x, feet is y. So feet per second. Feet per second is 40. 40 times x. So it's up and down though. Pulled by gravity. So no table. I just need to go construct my parabola. So there's nothing before the 40 feet per second, so that would be 0 feet, and there's nothing after it, so I'd assume that is 0 feet, and I'm trying to find question mark for how many seconds. So again, I construct the gravity equation. So negative 16, 40, and then we started at 0, so this is not needed, okay? One of the 3 spaces, that means it's out. Then this 0 feet replaces our y variable, okay, because feet is equal to y. So get that out, 0. Now we solve for x. We're solving for seconds, so we're solving for x. Well, we have a second power and a first power, so we definitely have to factor here. Factoring properties. So there's 2 answers. Now I just see 2 terms. So 2 terms is GCF, and then we check and see if we have a difference of perfect squares. Okay, so I have an x at the end that needs to be factored out. I have a negative in the front that needs to be factored out. Then 16 and 8, and it wouldn't be 16. 40 is not divisible by 16. 60 and 40 both divisible by 8. So it would be negative 8x this time. So that gives me 2, and to divide an x second by an x, we always end up with an x remainder, and then negative 5. Okay, then negative 8x needs to go here. Now we don't want to cross that out because now it does have x. Now is this a different, but it's positive negative, so I can circle D for difference, but 2 is not a perfect square. See, these are my perfect squares. 2 is not it, so I write nope, and I put that 2x minus 5 after the negative 8x. F1, F2. So negative 8x could equal 0, 2x minus 5 could equal 0. So I'll divide by negative 8 here. That takes me to 0. And over here I got times 2 minus 5, so I will plus 5. That takes me to positive 5. Then I divide by 2, and that is 2.5, or 2.5. Now 2.5 is a legit answer. So I mean 0 feet to 0 feet takes back to 0 feet takes 2.5 seconds.